my pleasure to be here, an honor, and thank you, Mr. Basir, to invite me to Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, actually Fred McMahon has mentioned Indonesia actually in the moderate economic freedom, and I would love to inform you some of the background and possibly what we are going in the future. Of course, if you follow well, like has been mentioned by Andrew, the ASEAN crisis that forced Indonesia under IMF program, we do a lot of, open up our economy and also, of course, restructuring program. And, of course, many of us know what the recipe advised by the IMF. And of course, Indonesia, compared to New Zealand and Hong Kong, we are really very big with population 261 million and more than 1,000 ethnic, language, and 6 religion, majority are Muslim, and our country almost as big as Europe. So, that's what we are talking about when we are discussing about Indonesia. And first, yesterday I remember that central planning is not good. Somebody mentioned it, but in Indonesia we always have central planning in the central level, and also we have more than 500 local government because there is decentralization, and we are democratic country, direct election to president and also local government. So yes, we have central and local medium-term economic plan, but in the process, the actually medium plan basically based on because direct election for vision and mission by president or local executive which going to vote, and the campaign then there is like promising vision mission then implemented to be the medium-term economic growth and development plan, and also the other areas. That's why in Indonesia, what would be the policy of government taken would be depend on, the vision and mission. Just would love to inform you for this government now, we have the policies, basically, like if you understand well Indonesia with big population and a lot of poverty and also unemployment and really youth inequality, with more than 17,000 islands, more than 50% is non-inhabited. I mean, not be used. I mean, still empty island. And that makes us, because the big disparity between west and east part of Indonesia, so inclusive growth in all aspects of our economic development becoming priority. And yes, basically even we use central planning in medium term in Indonesia, actually one of the priority invest in people and also invest in, increasing international competitiveness and, developing domestic economic growth. Basically, the most important thing, like I has mentioned before, low quality of human in Indonesia, and that's why it's really big chunks of resources we have to be allocated to invest on people. Even though if I could share with all of you that Indonesian tax ratio to GDP only around 10%, 11%, so low. That's why if we are talking like government share to GDP, usually less than 20% because the tax ratio is only around 10%. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be the background we have. That's why Fred McMahon mentioned that in terms of government size, Indonesia is good because, with the low tax ratio and also, of course, expenditure, we would be great compared to Europe and any other developed and developing economy. Like I has mentioned before that in Indonesia, we are now focusing inclusive growth, especially a lot of poverty in eastern part of Indonesia and rural area, and that's why a lot of money allocated to develop rural area with village fund. Yeah, for every village got money from the government to develop the economy, and they spend. Still, of course, some problem, but this time like to build road, then irrigation, clean water. Of course, we are talking like village market, and which would stimulate the economic growth and empowering people, and also open up access to the economy and development. And yes, like I has mentioned before, that state budget limited, only less than 20% of our GDP, but we spend around 5% to education and for the health. And it is very important because we will not be able to be competitive, to have international competitiveness and have access to Indonesian people have low quality of human resource. And in the areas of infrastructure, if you come to Indonesia, basically, the cost of logistic in Indonesia is really high, and that's why we spend a lot of money to develop infrastructure in Indonesia. If you take a look the data, the program, because we would love to lowering the logistic cost, because what we have now more than around, Singaporeans 1/3 or 1/4 of our logistic cost. That's why we will not be able to compete Singapore and any other country. That's why it's becoming important. And yes, we spend a lot of money to develop infrastructure, and that we believe would open up our economy more and more. Ladies and gentlemen, actually, in terms of investment in Indonesia, basically since the 1960s, 1970s, Indonesia investment law is really friendly to investor, almost basically for local and foreign investor there is no discrimination, and actually the investment law also has been amendment and also revised, and still the same policies, and no nationalization guarantee. So and that's big why a lot also FDI come to Indonesia. Of course, in terms of taxation in Indonesia, still we have already still not not really competitive, but we have already lowering tax rate for corporate tax now in Indonesia, flat 25%, and we are still in the process again to doing the tax reform. Of course, still in the process in Parliament, because we are would love to revise the tax law. Ladies and gentlemen, actually, I would love also to inform you that in Indonesia, government control to economy is less and less. That's why we also launch economic stimulus packages. It's already 16 to support investment, business, and also to increase our export. Some of the important policies, like in the industrial estate area, for the basic license, you could get it for 3 hours. And then we would love to strengthen our rule of law. And also, if you take a look like improving Indonesia logistic by lowering logistic costs, and then packages number 12, we would love to increase our ease of doing business, cutting procedure, permit, and cost. And yes, we are successful in doing that. For the last 4 years, our ease of doing business increased 48 points. So it's really make us happy, of course, and we still moving forward would love to increase it. And of course, in the packages also, there is one-stop services, single submission, that kind of thing. We are still working on it now because, you know, sometimes policies has been launched, but implementation takes some time. And if we are talking like, you know, dwelling time in the port area, because it would be really very important if we are open up our economy. And Indonesia basically an open economy since 1960s, 70s until now, yeah. But of course, still a lot of inefficiency in the process. That's why like dwelling time used to be around 2 weeks. Now we are working very hard, at least in Jakarta port, because around 70% of our export import from Jakarta, and it's be able to lowering, yeah, to around 3-4 days. And of course, tourism is important in Indonesia, and we have, you know, visa-free facility for 169 countries, and it's quite successfully increasing tourists come to Indonesia. Of course, talking about regulation has been mentioned by Fred, that you know, put us in number 120, because we understand around 40,000 more regulation, and a lot of the regulation hinder business and investment. Most of it actually local, because like I has mentioned before, local government more than 500, and they have autonomy, almost full autonomy. That's why, you know, government try to control it, I mean to lessen it. That's why like more than 3,000, yeah, 3143 local regulation has been revoked, and basically also just some week ago, a minister also revoked, dropped some regulation, because President always say we have to strengthen our rule of law and put less regulation, much more pro to market investment business, yeah. And that's why, like I has mentioned before, our ease of doing business and competitiveness increase. Even US News put Indonesia as one of the best place to invest. And yes, visitor arrival increasing, and Indonesia, we are quite successful in maintaining financial stability. And that's why we have free floating exchange rate since the IMF program launched in Indonesia, and all of the policies, of course there are still a lot of any other policies we are taken, but I would love to share with all of you that our economy start increasing again, still around 5%, but we are working very hard with a lot of policies, because we would love to increase our economic growth. But the good news is that unemployment lowering, poverty lowering in Indonesia, and inequality also decreasing in Indonesia. And of course, would be not easy for a country as big as Indonesia, that democratic, yeah, with direct election, if all the policies are not approved by Indonesian people. And yes, there is some of the polling show that what has been taken by government basically approved by Indonesian people. Like, is Indonesia moving in the right direction? 81% of Indonesians say yes, we are moving in the right direction, and a lot of optimism and satisfaction of Indonesian people to the government with what we are working and going on right now. So yeah, and that's what would I love to close my remark, that, you know, Indonesia is moving on the right direction. We are working hard to, you know, support business investment and increasing export, but of course we love to, lowering poverty, unemployment, and equality, because otherwise, Indonesia as big country, very democratic, we will not be able to sustain what we are working on, and we are developed if not supported by Indonesian people. That's why it's very important to be supported by the people, and yes, what we are working now is supported by Indonesian people. Thank you very much.